Illuminaughtii built her entire career exposing other people, calling out scams, breaking down creators, and building a reputation as someone you could actually trust. But right at the peak of her career, that completely flipped. Because after accusing another creator of copying her content, people started looking into her instead. And within days, former friends, employees, and even her ex-boyfriend all started speaking out, accusing her of manipulation, trying to ruin people behind the scenes, and using her platform to go after anybody she didn't like.
What I can only describe as retaliation from the person who's my ex, former employer, and prior colleague, Blair is in the process of currently foreclosing my home.
I'm Indart, and this is how one of YouTube's most trusted commentary channels, Illuminaughtii, turned into one of the most hated, and what she's become now. Before all of this drama, Illuminaughtii wasn't really a controversial creator. She wasn't loud, she wasn't constantly getting called out, she just made clean, well-edited videos exposing things that most people didn't even know about. That's what made her so successful in the first place. And over time, people started to trust her because of that. If she made a video on something, most people just assumed she'd done the research. And for a while, it worked perfectly. Her channel kept growing, her videos were pulling millions of views, and she built a pretty solid reputation for herself. But the problem with building your entire career around calling other people out is that eventually people start looking a little closer at you. And that moment came in April 2023 when she decided to call out another creator. She accused a fellow YouTuber, Legal Eagle, of copying her editing style. Not her ideas or her content, but just the way the videos looked. Which is kind of a weird thing to call someone out for, and almost immediately, people started pushing back. Not because they were defending him, but because the claim just didn't really make sense. Those video styles weren't unique at all, as they were used everywhere on the platform, and instead of proving her point, it just made the whole thing feel kind of petty. And that should have been the end of it. Simply a bad call-out, maybe a bit embarrassing on her behalf, and then everyone moves on. But instead, it did the exact opposite. Because once that happened, people started looking deeper into her. And this is where things started getting messy. Within days, people she used to work with started speaking out. Creators she collaborated with, and people from behind the scenes in her team all started to tell pretty similar stories. One of the first was The Click, who was someone she had worked closely with before on a group channel called Sad Milk. So this wasn't just some random person speaking out. And according to him, when the cameras were off, things were completely different from how they looked online.
She did this, she paid people to dig up dirt, make alt accounts, harass me for months.
He described Illuminaughtii, real name Blair, as controlling, difficult to work with, and someone who would go after people if things didn't go her way.
My main grievance was her insistence to create new rumors and slander about myself, one topic, and others after we left, and how she wouldn't leave us alone.
And then more people started backing that up. Other members from that same group shared similar experiences. And by this point, it stopped looking like one person being upset, and more started looking like a pattern. And from there, it only got worse, because one of the biggest people to speak out was her ex-boyfriend, Oz Media. And what he was saying was way more serious. He accused her of manipulating him financially, putting him into debt, and controlling a lot of his life behind the scenes.
At the time, Blair had bad credit, so all of the purchases, loans, everything was being placed in my name. Eventually though, the financial responsibilities that I incurred would stack up on me, building a mountain of monthly debt that would lead me into several financially tight months, and eventually just breaking.
Things got worse when he mentioned putting everything legal under his name and leaving him stuck with the consequences once they broke up.
Blair is in the process of currently foreclosing my home because of this stress of Blair taking my home from me. I need to pump the brakes and change directions so I won't be homeless come Christmas.
And again, this wasn't just one random claim. It lined up with everything other people were already saying, which made the whole situation feel a lot bigger than just YouTube drama. Because now, it wasn't just about a bad tweet anymore. It was about how she had been acting behind the scenes for years. Illuminaughtii eventually responded with a long video addressing everything that had come out. And at first, it looked like she was actually taking accountability.
And I made a mistake, and plain and simple, I was wrong. I just want to reiterate that I messed up, and I'm sorry for any stress this may have caused you.
She apologized for the situation with Legal Eagle, and it seemed like she was going to properly address everything else. But then, things started to shift. Instead of fully owning what happened, she started resisting, blaming other people, and trying to reframe the situation in her favor.
Now, before we get into debunking many false statements that have been made about me, based on the definition of the word plagiarism, his claims are simply false.
And that completely ruined whatever chance she had left at recovering her reputation. If anything, it just made people trust her even less. Because now, people were no longer just looking for an apology. They wanted her to actually take responsibility. And when that didn't exactly happen, it just made everything worse. And after that, everything started falling apart. Her views dropped hard. Videos that used to pull in millions were now barely hitting anything close to that. Subscribers started leaving, and the audience that used to trust her just wasn't there anymore. And you could see it in the comments as well. Instead of people talking about the content, it was just filled with people bringing up the drama, questioning everything she said, and pointing out things they hadn't noticed before. It got so bad that she eventually disabled comments on every single video, leaving over 600 uploads feeling completely lifeless. By now, people weren't even watching for the videos, they were watching to see if she would address the situation once again, or somehow fix what had happened. Unfortunately, that didn't really happen. Therefore, people just stopped watching altogether. People over on Reddit started sharing what they thought her worst video of all time was. Arguably the one she did on accredited zoos and aquariums. She got so much wrong, and it showed in the comments. Hell, myself and several other people did an over 2-hour live stream covering the video, which was a little over 20 minutes long. That's how much she got wrong. This is when I stopped watching her religiously. I remember listening to the video and realizing she didn't know what the f she was talking about, which led me to question if she was lying in other videos where I didn't know the topic that well. But instead of just stepping away and fading into irrelevancy, Illuminaughtii tried to fight it. Taking things off of YouTube and into real life, she started filing lawsuits and going after the same people who had spoken out about her. That included her ex-boyfriend, Ozmedia.
I was mortified that if I spoke out against Blair or even dared to cross her, that she would retaliate with taking my home from me. When I did speak out, as many of you are aware, Blair sent me a cease and desist. A cease and desist, by the way, over a Twitter thread which she apologized for not only in her video, but as well as privately.
And at that point, it wasn't just internet drama anymore. This had turned into something a lot bigger and far more serious than anybody could have imagined. But after all of that, it just kind of ended. The lawsuit was dropped, no big conclusion or any final moment. She was just done. But realistically, it didn't even matter, because the damage was already done. The audience she spent years building was gone, The trust was never going to come back, and the channel that people used to believe in has no real chance of recovering. It's now been over 2 years since her last upload, and even then, you could see she was fully running out of ideas. Trump isn't charitable. In other news, Water is Wet is a complete mess. And now anytime somebody hears her name, they only think of the controversies that totaled her career. Her life has been completely ruined due to her failure of an online persona, and if she ever tries to return under another name, it's almost certain she'll get called out and forced off the internet once again.